Hey everyone, Dan at Ochka Bushcraft. Well, I don't know if you guys remember or not, but when I first started doing videos on my oilcloth tarp, I told you guys that I had the chance to use it one time before fire season. I'm back here at that location, and minus the fire, because it is fire season, I'm going to set up the exact same shelter that I used in the exact same place. And this was an amazing shelter. I mean, it was pouring down rain on that day, just buckets, literally. And I had a roaring fire going. I was up underneath my oilcloth tarp. Absolutely no damage whatsoever to the tarp from any um, stray embers. And I was dry and I was catching the heat from the fire, and it was fantastic. So I've actually got the very same components. I gathered things back up and kind of put them back together. And I want to show you guys what I used, where I was set up at, and then we'll reconstruct this together, this tarp setup, because it is a really, really nice tarp setup to use in front of a fire with a traditional oilcloth tarp. So I have my oilcloth tarp. I have bank line. I have a hatchet, my leather gloves, and a couple of tent stakes. That's all you really need. Of course, you ought to have a knife with you anyway, but these items right here, along with your poles. So I'm a little ahead of you guys on reassembling, but I'll explain to you what I did. I took two tall poles, and you can see how tall they are. They're actually probably 7-8 feet tall. And I lashed them together. Just did a quick shear lashing. And I had some extra cordage hanging down there. I'm just going to get it out of the way. Okay, so I shear lashed these two poles together, just a real quick shear lash around, and then frapping it a few times, pulling it tight. I spread the legs out to the desired height that I'm going to want. And as you'll see, there's a reason. If you're going to set this up over a fire, so this part is actually going to sit above the fire, because this bar here that I lashed to these two poles, I'm going to cook off of. This is the same pot hook that I used when I camped out. I actually found it laying in the brush here. So I will actually hang this off the center pole, and this will be directly over where the fire would be, and it was on that day, and I will cook on it. So for that reason, this pole here and these poles need to be pretty high so that they're sitting, everything's up above the flames, plus your shelter is going to run on a pyramid pretty high up too. I also have one pole here that is very, very long. It's probably, this pole here is actually over 10 feet long, but I could have got away with a little shorter one. It's just what happened to be laying out here, and I sawed it off and delimbed it. And it is going to sit right here in this V. I'm actually not gonna, even though I'm calling this a tripod shelter because it will be a tripod when it's set up, I'm not starting out by lashing it as a tripod. What I'm doing is shear lashing two poles to make a bipod, a center pole here, and then I'm just gonna leave that freestanding and lean that other pole up in here, and as you'll see, it holds it in place perfect and solid. And I endured a serious storm, and it did not budge at all. So let me move things over to where I'm going to be, and we'll pick up over there. Okay, I'm actually right in front of the place that I had my shelter and fire and everything. I used this big fallen log to block the wind, so no smoke was coming up underneath me at all. And I put a layer of rocks along the bottom there to protect the log from catching fire, and also to reflect the heat back at me. And that way I was able to build the fire real close to the rocks and have the shelter pulled up fairly close. So I'm going to start reconstructing this thing for you guys. So bear with me as I move parts over, and you guys follow along. So I got my bipod. Remember, said it's shear lashed up here, and then I did a lashing here and here to get this pull on, and I'm going to set it right here over the top of my fire. So for now, I'll just lean that back and grab my long pole. Pull this up. Okay. Now that's solid. Even though that's not lashed together like a tripod, this is solid. It's not going to go anywhere. And as I said, I sat under this in a storm and endured. So I'm going to grab my oilcloth tarp and I'm going to lay it on up here in a plow point fashion. Eight foot by 8 foot, perfect size for this. And the oilcloth, again, I don't mind the extra weight at all because it is so nice to have something that I can safely use by a fire. Okay. Now I'm going to take the back point on this, and rather than staking it down, all I'm going to do is take the back point and I'm going to tuck it underneath this pole right here, and that will hold it secure in place. And then I'll have my exact measurement of where to tie this end off at. Okay. Back point is securely tucked underneath. So I'm going to get a piece of bank line and just do a couple overhand knots and tie this point off right here. All right, so I've got tie out, just run a piece of bank line through that, and I've got some natural little limbs that are poking out about that far that are going to hold this in place. Otherwise I might make like just a little notch up here so this wouldn't slide at all. But since I got that little remainder of a limb right there, this is not going to be able to go anywhere. And again, I'm just using a couple overhand knots. The nice thing about this bank line is that it does not slip like parachute cord. I've really come to like using bank line for shelters and things for that reason. Okay, let's give you guys a different angle. All right, as I said, the back point is tucked underneath my long pole there, holding it securely down. The other end is tied up with bank line, so all I need is 2 stakes to stake down the other 2 points on this tarp. Pull it out tight. Okay, that's good enough for now. And go around and get the other side. There it is, all set up. I got a wind reflector on this big log. I got the rocks in front of it to protect the log from catching fire and to reflect more heat back onto me. And this is a nice shelter. There's a lot of room inside. I'm going to take you guys around front and show you what it looks like sitting inside. All right, and I have it with me, my insulated thermarest pad. It's silver on one side, reflects the heat back up on me. So I'm sitting right here, up underneath here, and completely protected from the rain. My fire is right there in front of me. I'll give you guys one last turnaround at the end of the video and show you, but my fire is right in front of me. The smoke is going up outside of the tarp, right in front of this front point. The heat is coming in. It's catching on these sides. It's trapped behind me. I have my heated or insulated mat underneath me, and it's catching the heat. So I got heat coming up from underneath me, heat coming around the sides, heat coming in the front. That day it was pouring down rain. I sat under here, I ate my lunch. I turned my mat around because there's lots of room to lay back this way. So I turned my mat around, laid here on my mat, took myself a little siesta, and just enjoyed the heat of the fire. This, like I said, is just an amazing setup, and it also gives you a real traditional feeling, you know, the old oilcloth tarp of the mountain men days. I'm out here and I got my backwoods knife and my hatchet. I'm using traditional bushcraft skills, mountain man skills, if you will. I've got an old oilcloth tarp. It really gives a feeling of nostalgia to do a setup like this. Let me give you guys one last turn here so you can see it from my perspective from here looking out. Okay, final view from my perspective. I'm up here underneath the tarp, catching the heat, staying dry, out of the wind. Right in front of me, you can see the coals that are left. I mean the charcoal that's left was where my fire was. My pot hook hanging down right over the top of the fire. And that's where lunch cooked. I had lunch cooking right over the top of the fire. Got my rocks back here reflecting the heat back on me. Inside, warm and dry. And I built the fire fairly long this way, so it reflected heat in the full width of the front of the tarp. And just such a nice setup. I have a stack of firewood still sitting out here, and I could have put together a nice long fire here and easily stayed the whole night. It was really nice. And I wish that I could have done the fire for you guys now. It is fire season, but we're going to come back and we're going to set this up one more time so you guys can see how it works with fire, and we'll have something cooking over the fire. But if you're looking for a, you know, traditional mountain man type setup, if you will, using an oilcloth tarp, using some poles that you've gathered from your surroundings, using your bushcraft skills to do lashing, carve a pot hook, set up a camp like this, you really can't do much better than this type of a shelter. It is just amazing. It really makes you feel, you know, that nostalgia feeling. Like I said, you feel like you're alone out here, and It's 100 years ago, which with all that's going on right now in the world, that's not a bad thing. Thanks again for watching Oilcloth Bushcraft, guys. Appreciate it. Take care.